Welcome to Passion Time. I'm Patricia Gras. I'm here with Evangeline Caridas. She's an extraordinary management consultant. Why is she extraordinary? Well, she's written many books and many articles, but also she was a professor at U of H. But most importantly, her focus has been on excellence. Excellence in life, excellence at work, excellence in general, and how to be happy while you're working, which is so hard today, right?
Definitely.
It is hard because we're all stressed out. But first of all, I want to ask you, how did you find your passion and how are you living your passion?
How I found my passion was I was working for Xerox and I was a top consultant. I was a top manager and consultant there. And even though I was making lots of money, lots of accolades, lots of personal success, I still found myself being burned out and I really wasn't happy. So what I figured in my late 30s was that it's just not about money and prestige and position. There's something else in life. And so I started pursuing what is it in life that really makes a difference. Yes, it's a pursuit of excellence, but it's really about personal mastery.
Right.
We're all focused on what is it that really at our core, people that live life through their core do great work, whether it's raising a family, growing a garden, being a teacher, being a consultant. And so I found, was very fortunate in finding Professor Csikszentmihalyi and a friend of mine from Chicago who also went through the same program at Loyola.
Oh, okay.
And he was he had a sports wellness clinic. And so he helped train Olympic athletes to become champions.
Wow.
And then he had executives knock on his door and he said, we'd like to get some of this training. How can we be excellent and be champions in what we do? So it shifted into corporate. And that's how we did the study. I got help from Professor Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote the bestseller on, he was actually mentoring me through the project. He didn't have to do it. He was at the University of Chicago. I was at Loyola.
Okay.
He had no business helping me, but because he saw that we were applying it to organizations, he applied it to subjectively to artists, to musicians. How did they get in the zone?
Right.
How did they get in that space? And we took it and actually applied it in a corporate setting, and he was so excited for that.
Right.
We did the first corporate study on flow, and why does it make a difference? When people are in flow at work, they're happier, they're more productive, and the other huge thing is that they're healthier.
You talked about the flow and you talked about the core. I want you to describe, what is the core? Is it being in alignment with your soul, with your passion? What is the core? What do you mean by that?
The core is you finding out what is it in your your most inner being that gives you
Happiness.
meaning. It's not just happiness. Now, this was a pursuit of happiness. Csikszentmihalyi, he quotes Socrates saying that we all seek happiness. However, I think it's evolved, and I've studied a lot of Dr. Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
And in light of what happened to him and the losing his family in the concentration camps, he says that sometimes just the pursuit of happiness can be a selfish pursuit.
Right.
But if it's meaning, that has to do with being of service.
Right.
And through being of service, utilizing your creative gifts, what God gave you, to be able to make a difference in society. And so many of us, we're so busy chasing a dollar because that's the society that we live in,
right.
that we've forgotten meaning. So we get to the end of our life and we say, well,
What did I do?
What have we done? What is it all about? So I like to get people to focus on what is it that's important to you. And yes, we all need money. However, if you can tap into that inner being, that inner core of what gives you meaning, and it's a process. I didn't have a clue in my 30s.
Sometimes you're busy. You're so busy and stressed out and trying to, like you said, chase the dollar. You don't have time to think about it.
Well, sometimes you have to pull back and get in a quiet space.
Right.
We're going to talk about Pythagoras down the road, but he was a spiritual initiate, and one of the things that he said, that intuition is one of the highest spiritual faculties. And through intuition, his initiates, when they first joined his mystery school, they had to be silent for like 8 years. Can you imagine not talking for 8 years?
I would not be in the flow right there.
No, well, I would be kicked out after 24 hours.
How about 2 minutes?
But the point I'm trying to make, even though this is humorous, is that in silence, you can get in touch with your higher self. That's what a lot of the philosophers, I believe, did in Greece. They'd go to these special places and they would be quiet and they would get information. And where would that information come from? I think it's, the collective unconscious. It's that spirit that we all can connect to. And we need to be quiet. We need to figure out who are we as individuals, what are our creative gifts, and how do we want that to manifest. And it's an evolution. It's an evolutionary process. You're not, if you ask somebody, they may not know. They have to start doing the work of taking off the layers.
Now, you did talk about flow, and you've explained flow, but there's some steps to this that you found, like in a corporation, that works. Tell me some of those steps. One of them was, for example, learning.
Yeah, well, one of the things, learning is one of the criteria. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them today. However, we've set up our organizations to be bureaucratic and top-down and patriarchal. And I don't care how much re-engineering, how much training we have, it's still the old model. And my mentor said, it's like...
Not working.
It's not working. Why is it not working? Because the old model doesn't work. And so the model that I use, how you get people into flow, is you allow them to participate. You give them the strategy of the business. Then they have to figure out how to do it. You've hired adults. They're intelligent. They need to be able to have control over their work. That's one of the criteria. And I'll give you an example. During World War II, they were rationing food. So in one group, they did a study where they told the women what foods they had to ration. Well, that didn't work out very well. Right. Then there was another group that they told them, we have to ration the food. You guys figure it out. And that strategy worked. Right. Why? Because you gave them, you can't do things to people and put them in a box where there's no maneuverability. They have to have control over their work, the pace at which they work, the interaction with colleagues. They need to be able to have some control over their work. And so that's an example. Go ahead.
You give them a goal, but let them do it. And if they make a mistake, you review. But they have to have their own creativity and their own freedom to make decisions.
The other thing that you mentioned was learning. There was a manager that I worked with in Chicago, and he was trying to get his division to improve. And so what he did was that he would give his managers a task. He would say, okay, these are the three scenarios. This is what I want you to do, and here are the three scenarios. Which one do you pick? And sometimes they wouldn't pick the right one, but by doing that continuously, they got to learn. They got to think on their feet without depending on him. And so when he was out of town, his organization ran just like clockwork. So that's an example of learning where you let people stretch. You give them, with flow, it's an above average skill with an above average challenge.
Right.
And it may not feel comfortable at first, but eventually, and then you'll master that, and then you're seeking another challenge. So it's life finding challenges that you can master.
Right.
It's not so challenging where people get stressed out and they shut down.
And they don't finish it.
Yeah, or it's so boring that, it's such a menial task to them that they could do it in their sleep. That's not what you want. But so there are two kinds of flow. Personal flow, where you're responsible for these criteria, and the work that I did at Allstate and with Chickasaway High was, how do you design an environment in an organization that's conducive to flow? You'd use those very same components.
Right.
But you can actually design for flow, and the benefits are, as I mentioned, high productivity, happiness, and health. And that translates into the bottom line, because these are intangibles. And one of the things I wanted to mention was all the balance sheets and all the numbers, something has to happen before you get there. So what happens is life happens, people happen, and if you don't give them an environment and structure the work environment so they can really do well, and there's a lot of clarity about the goals, then you're not going to do very well. So intangible things like commitment, challenge, motivation, trust. Trust is huge.
Right, very much. And you also talk about mutual support and respect. That's also, and I really find that very, very important.
Well, I'll give you another quick story, because I like to illustrate that point. What does mutual support and respect mean? When Dr. DeBakey was still at Methodist Hospital, there was a reporter doing a story about him, and so he was following him around, and he saw that he was talking to the janitor, and he got really close, and Dr. DeBakey was saying, "John, do you know what a great service you do for this hospital and the doctors and our patients?" Well, the guy was beaming, And the idea is, here is the top of the hospital, the top of the food chain, talking to somebody that's the janitor. Do we ever stop and think who the guy on the bottom of the ladder,
Exactly.
what contribution he makes to society?
Exactly.
So
Thank
that's
you.
huge.
Yeah,
if
it is
managers
huge.
and leaders would do that,
Right.
they would just
It's a different culture, right? If you create that kind of culture of mutual respect, then the janitor will want to come to work every day and say, because, hey, you know what? They appreciate what I do.
Exactly.
Right?
That's everyone.
And, finally, your focus on meaningfulness. When we focus on happiness, it seems to be a little bit more selfish than saying, what is the meaning of my life? For life to have meaning, you do have to serve.
Well,
and you have to love.
Absolutely. Well, what Dr. Frankl said, that happiness, you can't pursue happiness, because when you chase it, you'll never find
never
it.
get it, yeah.
It ensues from what it is that you do, things that are meaningful. Whenever you help people,
Right.
But you have to find out. You have to get to the point where you realize that that's really what's going to make a difference in your life.
All right, Evangeline Caridas, it's such a great honor to have you here on our show. And please share your website so people want more information on what you do.
It's www.flow, F-L-O-W, then the word management, spelled out, all one word, .net.
All right, and you'll see it right here on the screen. All right, so see you next time on Passion Time.
Yo sé que tú puedes, que tú eres capaz. Cambia tu vida. La vida es una y tú vas a triunfar. Cambia tu vida. Con fe y esperanza las puertas se abrirán. Tu destino tú lo manejas y mucho más. Cambia tu vida. Toma el toro por los cuernos y dale.